So, welcome everyone to this podcast between Mark and Myra, a conversation with Mark and Myra. This is going to be the first of a series of podcasts on different topics. These are our own opinions. We're not experts in these particular fields, but this is just picking up from knowledge and things that we may have read or heard from other people. So, we're not experts, but I think these are tips and advice, bits of advice that we can probably give that we've gathered ourselves. Also, it would be great to hear back from any of you. So if anyone has any comments, or if they feel that there's something that we haven't said or haven't touched on, or even give us ideas for other topics that we'd like to discuss, then please do feedback, and we'll be more than happy to schedule that into our time. Okay, so without further ado, so the topic today, we're going to be looking at the cost of living, and I don't think there's anyone at the moment that can escape the current cost of living crisis that we're all going through. It doesn't matter your background, it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter your social status, whatever it might be, whether you're working, whether you're unemployed, we're all being affected by the cost of living that's happening at the moment, be it in the supermarkets or just generally our bills or anything. It's impacting everyone. So anything that we can do to give some advice and to help others is going to be something that should be great to look at.
Can I just come in there and just say that if you do feel that you're not being affected by the cost of living crisis, because obviously that what Mark's just said, that is an assumption. So we don't know for sure. So if you are out there and you do feel that you aren't being affected, could you leave a comment and let us know and tell us where you are, or in terms of where you are in the world, or what you do, or how you're escaping the cost of living crisis, because it would be useful to get the perspective of people who are in a possibly different position in terms of their geographic location or their financial income or whatever, or what have you. So yes, we are open to hear other perspectives as well.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you. Okay, so these are some questions that have come in to us from some earlier viewers, and the topic today we're actually going to look on is motoring and motoring costs. Now, there is an assumption that obviously those of you who are listening to this podcast right now are you may have a vehicle, or you may know someone who does have a vehicle, but we're not making the assumption that everybody drives. However, as I said, we're going to just focus on this particular area. I've been driving now for 20 plus years. Myra, how long have you been driving for?
I'd say about the same.
About the same as well? Okay. And there are costs associated with motoring that by now we should be very knowledgeable about. But some of the things that have really impacted us lately have been things such as the fuel pump. When you go to the fuel pump and you see the prices, I'm going to give away my age here, but I always joke to Myra and say that when I first started driving, I clearly can remember, here in the UK that is, a litre of petrol, unleaded back in those days. They used to have leaded and unleaded, but a litre of petrol was around about the 48 pence per litre mark. And that was just at the time when I was just starting to become a driver, a motorist myself. Today, that same litre of fuel, I think the last time I looked, it was about 148 or something, 149.
The cheapest I've seen is 151.
There you go. So, and there's been a big shift as well, because when I first started driving, I don't know about you, Myra, if you remember this, but diesel wasn't a huge thing. It was more about, as I said, leaded or unleaded. You did have a diesel pump, but it tended to be taxis or, lorries that would use it. But there's been a huge shift over the years for people to drive diesel vehicles because they're supposed to be more economical. You do tend to pay more for it at the pump, but on the long run, it is more economical. But as Myra just mentioned, the one thing I do notice is that the cost of diesel has increased so much now that I have to think about every journey I'm going to do Whereas before I wouldn't even have thought twice about it. Now I have to think, well, is it really necessary? And actually, while I do that journey, could I actually do something else as well, just to, make up so it's not an extra journey on top? What's your thoughts on that, Myra?
Yeah, I agree. We've got to be more mindful. I don't ever remember, like as a child, driving around with my parents and looking at petrol stations to see how much the fuel was. And yet my children, our youngest child is 10 years old, and she looks out and comments on the price of petrol as we drive around. And, we are very conscious of the fact that different petrol stations, in terms of the different branding, have different prices, and we're a bit... we find that really interesting because they can be like literally across the road from each other and have different petrol prices. And so we look out for the cheapest petrol prices and we will only go there, whether we've got loyalty at somewhere else or not. We go in, we're being loyal to our pockets now and not to the supermarkets or the petrol pumps.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you've made about the fact that you could literally have a petrol station literally on the opposite side of the road and it'll be a penny or 2 pennies difference to the one that you're currently in. So that leads me on to something about, it's good to shop around as well, because sometimes Myra will go out and she said, I've just drove past a petrol station, on my journey, and it was 2 or 3 pence less than the one that's just round the corner from me. And I said, thank you. So basically, Myra and I, we both have our own cars. So it's a case if Myra's out somewhere and she sees something and says, it's a good price, then I'll think, next time I'll make, not make an extra journey, but if I'm in that direction, I will obviously try and fuel up at that place. Which then gets me on to thinking that I know there are a few apps and there are a few websites where people can put in details of where the cheapest fuel is in your area. The names escape me, but I'll try and put some links in at the end of this podcast so that people can find them. But yeah, there are some websites where people diligently, if they drive past a particular station and they see that the price is such and such on the forecourt, they'll put that in as well. And that can be useful. Because obviously then if you're in an area and you know that it's a few pence cheaper somewhere else not far from you, then that can help. That all adds up.
And some people might think, it's only a penny or 2 pence difference. But you've got to think about how much fuel you're putting in, because if it's a penny or 2 or even 3 or as much as 5 pence a litre and you're putting in 10 litres, that's 50p. And if you're doing that regularly, that adds up. And you might think, it's only 50p, but that's 50p you could be spending on something else.
Yep.
And why spend extra money if you don't actually have to?
Yep.
And you might say, but by the time you've gone to that petrol station to find the cheaper price, you've already spent that extra 50p. But that's why we're saying if you're passing by anyway, because the only reason I know that the prices are cheaper in certain places because I'm passing by. So then I will make sure, as I'm passing by, to fill up.
And that's an interesting point you just made there, Myra, because you mentioned it earlier about when we started driving, the thing that you never really took much notice of what the price of petrol was at a particular it was just, you needed fuel, you just put it in, But have you, when did you feel that you started to take more of a conscious look or a conscious effort of actually remembering where prices were cheaper or more expensive?
I can't remember exactly, but I remember, I'd say recently, a couple of years ago, there was a petrol strike, and in the UK, and certainly where we live, there was actually a shortage of petrol, and so people were literally queuing up for fuel, and there were queues, and some people couldn't get to work, and because it was fuel, the buses were down as well. And so I think after that's when I started becoming more aware of it, because before, like you say, if you needed fuel, you just filled up and you didn't really compare prices, or you'd go to where it was local, or you'd go to wherever you had a loyalty card, and I didn't compare prices. I didn't think it mattered. But I think now that the cost of living is affecting so many different areas of life, you have to be conscious of it and you have to be aware of it. Well, I have to be anyway. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, I would agree. I totally agree with you on that. Okay, so obviously we've spoken how about by shopping around, being a bit more diligent about the prices that you see, can make a real big impact. Just by literally shaving a few pennies off here or there, it can actually make a difference in the long run. And don't always assume that your local station is always the cheapest as well. So, when you're out and about, and as I said, there are certain apps and websites. I think even the AA might do it. Don't quote me on this, but I'm sure I have seen it where they will give you up to date, prices at the fuel pumps, in your area.
One tip I'd like to share is that I sometimes go to Sainsbury's, and in Sainsbury's, that used to be quite cheap. It isn't the cheapest at the minute in our area, but it used to be. And what I noticed was you can pay at pump, but if you pay at pump, you don't get the the voucher slips. You get like a little voucher slip. So if you go into the actual petrol station and pay at the kiosk, when you put your payment through, if you've got a Nectar card, you get like vouchers come back out. Some of them are like say 5 pence a litre, or if you shop in store, you get discounts and stuff like that. Whereas if you just pay at the pump, I know it's quicker, but you're losing out on those vouchers. And again, my other tip is do your maths, because you might think, oh, this is a voucher and it's giving me 5 pence off a litre, but if actually you can go to a different petrol station altogether and save 6 pence a litre, you're better off. So I know a lot of people cringe at the idea of having to do mental maths, but it can save you money. And if you're reluctant to do the maths, then ask your phone or ask one of your children if you've got them.
Well, actually, that's a good point you just made as well there, Mara, because and I might be straying a little bit off topic, but I'll still keep that. But you said about loyalty and loyalty cards. So if here in the UK, Sainsbury's is a big supermarket, but it has a loyalty scheme called Nectar Card, where when you go in, you scan it and you get points. And those points, if I remember rightly, points me to prizes. I'll share my age again. But those points then can be used against your shopping. Is that right?
Yeah, it converts to money off.
Yeah. So yeah, you and obviously Tesco is another big supermarket here in the UK, which again you have the club card. Again, you can scan that at the petrol station if that particular Tesco obviously has a petrol station, and again that can help towards your shopping. So it might not have an immediate saving on your fuel at that time, but it could transfer over onto your weekly shop.
Yeah, and we'll talk about club cards more in a different podcast, because that's a topic on its own.
Indeed. So thank you, Myra, for bringing me back on topic again. So we talked about fuel. So you've done your due diligence. You've shopped around. You look for the best prices on fuel. So what other things can we do to actually help as motorists to make sure that we can still save some money when it comes to fuel in your vehicle? So one of the things that I have heard, I've been driving for many years on this, and again, the AA, which is the Automobile Association here in the UK, always gives, bits of advice and things like that. And one of the things they always say about is if you think about your car as a vehicle moving along the road, if you have too much weight in your vehicle, your car engine has to work harder to move that car forward. It has to work. The engine has to work harder, so therefore it's going to consume more fuel. Obviously, if you've got a car full of passengers, then that can't. There's not a lot you can do about that. However, look in your vehicle. Look in your boot. I have to say I'm very, very. I want to use the right word. I'm very finical about what I carry around in my boot. I've literally got the bare minimum in there. Vehicles these days don't even have spare tires in them because of that extra weight. That's the reason why modern cars don't tend to have tires in them, or a spare tire or spare wheel, because that's an extra weight in there. So I always keep the bare minimum there. I've got a few bags in there so that when I do my grocery shop, they're always to hand. I might have the bare basics of things, just maybe not even tools, but just something that I need. But I won't keep my boot just full of, just using it as an extra storage space, because as silly as it may seem, that's extra weight that you're just driving around all the time, and your car's being less efficient.
I must admit, I used to do that. I ain't gonna lie. I must admit, I did. I used to use it as an extra storage feature, and it does cost unnecessary money, so you can't do that. And I would also say as well, Mark just said, if you've got extra people in your car, you can't do anything about that. But don't be afraid to ask people for petrol contributions if you're dropping people off, or carpooling or anything like that. If it's a carpool and you're actually all getting equal use out of each other's vehicle, that's fine, because it will offset each other. But if you're just occasionally dropping somebody here or occasionally dropping somebody there, don't be afraid to ask for them to contribute to fuel, because it's going to cost you. Nobody's car runs on water. And even me with my teens, they're always, can you drop me here, can you drop me there? And I'll say yes, but, my car don't run on water. So you're going to have to contribute something at some point. And now both our teens are working. They do throw me a little change now and again. And I'm grateful for it, because it's every penny counts.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's a very good point that you've made about the carpool side of things. Here in the city of Birmingham, where we live in the UK, it's a major city. It's the second largest city in the UK, and I do remember a few years ago there were lanes that were purely for car sharing. Yeah. So what the local council here in Birmingham were trying to do was encourage people to share their car journeys with others, and then as a benefit, they get to use those lanes so they could get through the traffic a bit quicker than someone who doesn't. I've not seen those lanes so much these days, but I remember that was something that they used to promote. And indirectly, again, we're still keeping on topic, that actually kind of helps with your carbon footprint, because then it means it's another vehicle that's not on the road as well, if you're actually sharing a journey. So yeah, that was a valid point actually, Mari, as you mentioned. If you are sharing, somebody's in the vehicle, get them to stump up a little something, that helps, because it's helping them and it's helping you as well. So, that can spread the cost a bit more. Okay. Right. So we talked about extra weight. And again, I'm not saying that you have to forego that extra serving of apple custard pie or whatever it is to keep the weight down. We're just really talking about things that you've got in your vehicle that are unnecessary, that you don't need to cart around with you. Another thing again that's been mentioned on a number of times is to check your tyre pressure. Now, Myra, how often do you check your tyre pressure?
Never.
Well, did you know that if you were to keep your tyre pressure to the optimum manufacturer's specification, you can save yourself up to, I think it was something like 20% in terms of fuel efficiency in your vehicle. So...
No, I didn't know that.
Okay. And do you know where you can find that information about where your manufacturer's guidelines are?
Yeah, I can ask my husband.
Okay, so for those of you who don't have a husband who knows everything...
He don't know everything.
For those of you who don't have a husband who knows everything, I can give you a few little tips. So with every vehicle, when you purchase your vehicle, even if you've got it second-hand or whatever, third-hand, typically you will have in the glove box or the glove compartment, depending on where you are, the owner's manual, and there'll be a section on there which will tell you all sorts of information about your vehicle, but also about the optimum tyre pressures. However, there is a very quick and easier way to find that information. If you go to your driver's side of your vehicle and open your door, just inside the door frame, you will find, just by the car seat, if you go out there now, well, I don't want you to go out now because I want you to listen to this podcast.
Take it with you.
But the next time you do, if you go out and look just down to the side, it's probably a sticker that's been there since, well, in fact, the sticker will have been there since the car was built, but you may just blindly just not notice it. The optimum tyre pressures are there, and it will show you what your tyre pressure should be for that vehicle, whether it has a full load, a half load, or anything like that. And those specifications are there, and you can then use that information to then make sure that your tyre pressures are kept to the optimum method.
Ooh, fabulous. That's very interesting.
There you go. So here's a bit of wisdom, a bit of word of advice from Mark. So that's where you will find information about tyre pressures as well. So as I say, it's just on the inside of your door, but on the driver, typically it's on the driver's side. Open the car door and you'll see it on the seal as you're about to step into the car, and it's usually about halfway down, just by the car seat. So you should have that information there. Another plus for keeping your tyre pressure at the right pressure is that it also saves on the wear and tear of your tyre as well. So if you keep it at the optimum pressure, your tyres will wear less, if that makes sense. So you're keeping it at the premium. If it's under deflated or over inflated as well, because that's the other thing too, if it's got too much in there, it can wear unevenly, and then can cause your tyres to wear down prematurely, which is then going to cost you more. So there you go. There's another saving tip. I didn't even think of it. It saves you more on your tyres.
That's fabulous. And can I just say as well to all those single ladies out there, because I do salute single ladies, and I was a single lady for very many years. I did just say that I rely on my husband, but I need to do more, learn more, upskill yourselves, do your research. Let's not rely on men to take that kind of information, take the lead on our motoring, because it is 2023. I've got 2 daughters. My oldest is, just getting ready to drive, and I don't want her to feel naive or ignorant about going out and being on the road. I have been naive and ignorant. I rely on my husband, and before that I relied on my dad. But like Mark said, it's literally on the car itself, and we'll probably read. So we can empower ourselves and learn a little bit about our own car safety and maintenance. I will definitely do that. I'll put my hand up to that myself.
And it's actually interesting you mentioned that about maintenance as well, Myra, because I'm not a mechanic. My field is not mechanics whatsoever. But when I was younger, I used to tinker around with cars with my elder brother, who is more of a mechanic. So I learned some basic tips. But there are some things that are way within your own capabilities. Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to go to, for example, something that's very simple and straightforward, but it might seem a bit overwhelming, is just changing the bulb, especially on your the rear vehicle, like on your brakes or your indicators or anything like that. And bulbs are pretty inexpensive. They cost, here in the UK, they just cost a few pounds for either the brake lights or indicators or anything like that. And if you just open your car boot and you look in the back, I would say it's the same difficulty as changing a light bulb in a house. So if you've ever changed a blown light bulb in your home, I would say changing the rear one. I'm not talking about the headlight, because the headlight tends to be a bit more tricky, but the rear one is something that I would say most of the listeners on this podcast now will be able. It's well within your capability to do. It might seem a bit overwhelming to begin, and once you've done it once, you think, oh, is that it? Is that all I have to do? Then those little things. And if you go to there's a big chain here in the UK called Halfords, and they will change it for you, but they will charge you to do that. It might be a few pounds, but you just think, well, why should I give somebody? Would you pay someone to come and change a blown light bulb in your house on a lamp? And I say it is that level of difficulty. But I do take on board that it can feel overwhelming. But the thing is, today, you can literally Google within a few seconds and it will tell you how to do it on your... If you go onto YouTube, you'll have somebody actually showing you exactly what you have to do step by step. And you can find that is something that can actually help just save just a few pounds just by doing that.
And once you know how to do it, you know how to do it, and nobody can't take that knowledge from you.
Absolutely.
So it helps with your independence as well.
Yeah, it empowers you.
Exactly.
It empowers you. Okay. Right. What are we doing for time? Right, we're coming up to 25 minutes. I thought this was going to be a shorter podcast, Mara, but do you want time for one more topic on the same...
Go on then.
Of motoring? Okay. So, one of the things that did come back to me about motoring costs, now this is something I do diligently every year, and I think this is something I've just got used to doing. So, here in the UK, and I think this is the same for any of our listeners, wherever you are in the world globally, you have to have car insurance on your vehicle. And car insurance probably isn't the most exciting of things, but over the past year, since COVID really, I have noticed, and it's always been a case, but this time it's the first time I've seen such a huge leap in the cost of insuring your car. And if you're a driver like myself who's got, no claims and hasn't been involved in an incident, has not claimed on their vehicle, I don't drive a particularly sporty vehicle that's got a big engine or anything like that, and yet I have seen my price go up almost 60, in fact if I did the calculation, it's about 70% more than it was the previous year. So what I would say to anyone here who may be a younger driver or an even experienced driver, always look around for better deals. When your insurance premium comes up for renewal, don't just automatically go with the insurance premium that your current insurance company gives you, because usually they tend to give you a good deal as a new customer, but as soon as you become an extra customer, you no longer receive that extra discount. So do a bit of searching around. You can go online. There's lots of comparison websites that you can go to, and you can find much better deals for your car insurance. I have to admit, this year I did it with my own insurance, and it turned out that my own insurance company was the best one to go for. But I didn't just assume. I did look around. Mara, you got any thoughts or tips on that point?
Yeah, I would just remind everybody that, maybe years ago it would have been difficult to do that kind of research. You would have had to be making phone calls, and then you would have been thinking about the cost of those phone calls. But now you can do it on your mobile phone. You've got Compare the Market and different websites and platforms that will do the comparisons for you. So it's all about, and I'm saying this for myself because I am going to be the laziest person that is involved in these calls. I am very lazy, so when I'm saying this, I'm not poking at anybody. I'm literally reminding myself that to not be lazy and to do the homework and to use the technology that you have at your fingertips. And also don't be embarrassed to ask family and friends and see who they use, or and if you do find better, then do share with family and friends and let them know that you found a better deal somewhere else. And a lot of people also get very comfortable in what we already have. You'll have insurance or gym membership or gas or electricity or whatever, and we get very comfortable with those providers, and that's how they make their money off of us. But like Mark said, if they offer incentives to new customers, so you want to try and do your research and bounce around and be a new customer as many times as you can, so that you can benefit from those rewards and incentives. Yes, it takes time. Yes, you have to change, and yes, it's going to make you feel a little bit anxious because you're trying a new service or provider. But that's the catch. That's how they keep a hold of you. So look at it as, almost, if I go onto a different life insurance, what offers do they have? What incentives do they have if I go onto different car insurance, what offers do they have? If I do different house insurance, what offers do they have? And then if people can bundle you and you can make savings in that way, then do, because oftentimes it's just because either we're being lazy or because we're anxious about trying something new. So if we can overcome being lazy and making up our minds to do that work, and it's not something you have to do every day. These things usually only have to be renewed once a year. Then you're making a saving. And again, if you're willing to try something new, you know, just because you've signed up something, make sure you have a call-off period so that you have a chance to think about it. You know, find out what you're doing so you're not in bed with something you don't want or not happy with for a year. And even if you are, it's 1 year. It's 1 year, and then you can get out of it. Very recently, I got a call from my telephone saying they're going to offer me this and that and everything, and I was like, okay, yeah. And then Mark was frowning at me, and after the call, I said, why are you frowning at me? And he said, because I could get it cheaper for you. And I was like, okay then. And luckily, I had a 14-day call-off period, but they phoned me back that same afternoon, about 10 minutes later, to say something had gone wrong, so could they have my details again? And I said, no, it's fine. My husband can get me a better deal elsewhere. And I don't know what that deal is, but I'm about to find out, and it will save me money. So, yeah, don't let your fear prevent you from saving money, and don't let, you know, procrastination stop you from saving money, because all these pennies, you might think I don't need any extra money, but even if you just put it in a little jar, you can use it for holiday money. And if you really don't need it, you can donate it to charity, because trust me, the charities do need it. Okay.
That's a wonderful way to finish on that, Mara. I totally agree with you. As Mara just said, there's so many pearls of wisdom that she's just given in that little phrase there. But, you know, one of the things that I would even stress on and really highlight that Mara just mentioned, which is about the, you know, that comfort, that place of comfort, and you feel maybe you're loyal to a particular brand or you know, service, provider or service. There is no loyalty there from their perspective. As I say, they'll have the best offer and the best deals for new customers, but you may have been a loyal customer with them for 10, 20 years, for example. They don't care. You're just a number at the end of the day. So definitely do not feel that at the end of the day, it's still your choice. You may want to stay with them, but if you can find a better deal offering you the same, why would you not, you know, take that up? And that same philosophy can actually extend to things like your like breakdown membership or anything like that. Every year I do. It was a friend that actually told me the tip, and I didn't even know about it, which is that negotiate with them when it comes up for time for renewal. Don't just automatically, because, you know, having breakdown cover is a very, very valid and valuable thing to have on your vehicle, because nobody knows when, you know, you might need or you know, need that service. But don't just, you know, don't just go for the renewal, because if you're savvy and you look at it, you'll notice that your renewal will go up each year, and it will keep going up. Might be a few pounds, but it does keep going up. And if you look back a few years, you'll think, gosh, that's gone up quite a lot. So negotiate when it comes time for renewal. Call up your provider, and there's usually a line that will go through and just say you're looking to leave the organisation, and they'll ask you why, and you'll say, because I can get a better deal elsewhere. And I am telling you, this is something that I have experienced 9 times out of 10, or I would say 10 times, because it's been 10 times out of 10 for me, but 9 times out of 10, they will always say, okay, let's see what we can do for you. And what they might do is they might just match the previous year or something like that, but then at least you know you haven't paid extra for the next year going forward. So, you know, these are little things, that little tips that you can use, and I found them quite valuable over the years, and they've certainly helped in just keeping my motoring costs to not a bare minimum, but just basically helping to just keep them, you know, in context, really, just keep them under control.
Mm-hmm. So if you've got any other ideas, tips, suggestions, advice, experiences that you'd like to share, then as we said at the beginning, please feel free to leave your comments. Also, as Mark said at the start, if there are other topics that you would like to hear us discuss, then do feel free to leave those in the comments too.
Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners, and please subscribe to keep in contact and find out when we have our next podcasts. And thank you very much for listening to us today.
Bye.
Bye bye.